this is my review of Deathnote. Okay, so in this episode, the police have actually started investigating the mysterious happenings of the Deathnote's abilities, and are a bit confused as to whether or not they should count as a serial killing or rather just a bunch of different circumstances. So yeah, the episode starts off with Light and Ryuk going through Light's daily routine. Ryuk is trying to strike up a conversation with Light, but because only Light can see Ryuk, that doesn't really work out too well. But Ryuk is notably bored. He doesn't understand how Light can actually put up with everything he does every day, and also explains how he feels like Light is actually wasting a little bit of time. But Light dismisses it, mainly because he's unable to talk to him while there's so many people around. And it's only when they get home that Light explains everything. So he explains to Ryuk how he has to keep up appearances so that nobody ever gets suspicious that he's the one who's killing all these people. And so he only has a limited window of time between when he gets home and when he goes to bed to actually use the Deathnote to hide to kill people. So he has to at the very least keep up appearances so that nobody ever suspects him as the killer. So meanwhile, the general populace has started to determine that it may in fact be a serial killer doing all of this. So Light is immediately suspected as like a killer because nobody knows who he is. I should explain that. Nobody knows who he is, but people begin to suspect that there's at least somebody going out killing criminals. And sure enough, people start spreading rumors online calling him Kira, which takes the word killer from English and translated into Japanese being Kira. So people have started to notice that Kira is a spirit of justice at the very least, and is in fact killing people because of his justice. As Light explains, he's being worshipped online, not so much in person, but online, because everybody gives a politically correct answer in person, which is that you're not supposed to kill people, but secretly behind closed doors, nobody cares. It's just a sad truth. It's just a sad truth. You can be as politically correct as you want in public, but behind closed doors, you're a completely different person. So yeah, it doesn't really matter. And that's one of the reasons why Donald Trump became president, because he's not a different person behind closed doors. He's the same anti-political asshole we elected inside or outside of his private areas. So yeah, we elected him because he's politically incorrect. So there we go. But yeah, as Light is trying to figure this out, he's actually contacted by his little sister Sayu, who is asking him to help her with a private tutoring session, and Light agrees, but finds out from Ryuk during this little sequence where he's helping his little sister help work on it, that he's actually not allowed to keep anybody near the Deathnote, because if anybody else touches the Deathnote, they'll be able to see Ryuk, figure out exactly what's going on, and then there you go. So Light begins to rig up a contraption to actually hide the Deathnote. So what he eventually comes up with is he makes a special drawer. He modifies the drawer on his desk to hide the Deathnote. It can only be opened a very specific way, and if it's opened in any other way besides that very specific way, it'll explode and take the Deathnote with it. So basically he rigged his desk to explode if somebody winds up finding the Deathnote in the false bottom of his drawer. But then again, he also hid a diary in there as well. So the diary should satisfy most people's curiosity, and he's hoping that will be enough. But in any case, now we get to the fun part, which is that the police have started investigating Kira. So the police task force, led by Light's father, it's his little name panel is shown briefly, but you can clearly see his name on it. But he's very clearly Light's father, But in any case, the police task force led by Light's father are contemplating whether or not they should be investigating Kira, since it's been shown that a bunch of random heart attacks kind of doesn't fit the bill of a serial killer, since there's no real way of determining whether or not these were intentional. And because at this point in the story, nobody knows the Death Note exists. Nobody at all knows that the Death Note is actually a real thing. So nobody knows that it actually is in fact a person behind it, killing people. And since they can't actually figure out who's actually, if somebody is responsible or not, they decide to bring in the mysterious private investigator known only as L. So L is mysterious. He never shows up in person except for brief little glimpses of his face toward the end of this episode, and even then we don't even get to fully see what he looks like. But we only get to see the bottom of his face. But in any case, L is eccentric and a bit reclusive. He's one of those characters who never appears out externally in the outside world, but everybody knows of him, and even then he's solved every single case that he's been confronted with. So he's a bit of a big deal. And sure enough, the police are a bit skeptical on including him because he only really takes on cases that he finds interesting. But then this mysterious man comes up and is the only real way to contact L. We don't know who this guy is either. But he shows up at the precinct, tells everybody that L is already on the case, and sure enough, shortly thereafter, L, using a voice changer, actually contacts the police and tells them that he has a pretty good idea of where this person is, where this guy named Kira is, and determines that he's actually somewhere in Japan. But in order to fully conclude that, he needs a bit of cooperation from the police task force, and they need to do exactly what he says so that he can actually, determine that the killer is actually in Japan. But though he doesn't disclose his reasons as to why he thinks this is. So the police do exactly what he asks, and the next day, Light and Ryuk are sitting in the room after having explained how the drawer is going to conceal the Death Note. When there's suddenly a broadcast on TV across multiple channels. So it's revealed to be a worldwide broadcast, and then a man claiming to be L, called Lind L. Taylor, gets up in front of a camera and explains how he knows who Kira is, how he plans to stop him, and how he believes that Kira is evil despite what his good intentions might be. And Light is a little upset by this. He immediately realizes that Linda L. Taylor is a little arrogant. At the very least, he believes that what Light is doing is wrong. So Light immediately tries to off him with the Death Note, and it works. But then the twist comes in. So as is revealed, this broadcast actually wasn't aired all over the world. It was only aired in the Kanto region of Japan. So, at which point the real L flickers on screen, using his voice changer to actually contact Light, and reveals very publicly that he planned this whole thing. And explains how he deduced that Kira was operating out of Japan. So as he explains, the reason he realized Kira was operating out of Japan was because his first victim was a kidnapper who was only ever made public in Japan. So he realized that the person who watched that broadcast was most likely living in Japan. It explains how he plans to take Light down, and that if he can kill him, he should do it. And sure enough, Light can't, because he needs a name and a face. So, and because L is never actually explicitly shown, he's pretty much safe. So Light is unable to kill L despite L's many goadings, and also in the process reveals that he does plan to take him down, and also explains Lindell Taylor was a criminal. He explains this to Light, pointing out that he did a whole bait and switch to trick at Light into actually killing him, or killing him as it were, so that he could accurately expose that this guy was Japanese. So yeah, basically in a couple of seconds, L is basically able to dismantle this whole entire thing. he's able to accurately point out that Light, or Kira, is operating out of Japan. He's able to determine this by making it look like it's a worldwide broadcast, but in actuality is just one region in Japan, and that he reveals that they were actually going to go around the world until they found the guy, but since they got a first try, they didn't have to. So, yeah, it wound up working out. So now L is going to dog him, and now it's going to be an interesting dynamic. If a name and a face of either is ever discovered, they will die. They will be killed. So, yeah. Now it's a battle against two very smart people. It's L, who was able to determine that Kira was operating out of the cancel region of Japan with very little information, and Light, who is very smart in his own right because he has rigged his drawer to explode if there's ever any chance that somebody could find the Deathnote. And now these two people have to face off against each other with their own idea of what justice is. They plan to take the other one down for the sake of their own idea of justice. So, yeah, now it's going to be a bit of an interesting dynamic. It's going to be a fight between two intellectual titans, as it's put, and the two are now going to try and outsmart one another. And it's only going to be a matter of time before one of them finally does the other one in. So, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But, in any case, that's my review of Deathnote. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below. And also, check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out. And you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that are my way saying thanks. So be sure to check those out in the description below as well. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!